Hey, Kyle.
Kayla, what's up? Talk to
I
me.
think we need to have a difficult conversation.
It's my outfits.
It is your outfits, but it's also the fact that I don't think you're pulling your weight on the podcast.
All right. Okay. Tough news to hear.
So I have brought in the big guns.
Oh,
Very
say more.
exciting stuff. We've got Erin McGoff, the founder of Advice with Erin, and she will be talking about difficult conversations at work with us.
Let's get into it. Erin, thank you so much for joining us on Per My Last Email.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you. You're kind of a big deal. I looked at our follower counts, and there was some
A
discrepancies.
little difference in the two.
Some discrepancies between the two, so we appreciate you stooping down to our level today.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna do an Anchorman, like people know me, but I don't know if everybody gets those references anymore.
I do get the Anchorman
Okay.
references, so this is an Anchorman
This is a safe
space for
Okay,
you.
thank God.
So, Advice with Erin, talk to us about your role founding that, the success it's had, and then also you started your career as a filmmaker. So how did you pivot from filmmaker to career advice?
Yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, a lot of people are surprised, like, oh, you don't have a background in like HR and recruiting, and I'm like, hell no, like, because that's not my dream job. My dream job is working in the film industry, and I was, in my definition, successful in that. I premiered a feature film when I was 23. I got a Pulitzer Fellowship. Everything was going great. I moved to New York City, and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And everything came to a screeching halt, but especially the film industry. And I was working as a freelance video editor, and something that you have to do when you're a freelancer is you are constantly interviewing, constantly. And so I've worked for over 25 companies across industries. So I was just observing, all these different companies. And at the same time, as a director, I was hiring, for film productions. So I was kind of straddling both of these lines, and I've always been the go-to bestie. DV career advice. I've always been that girl. So it sounds kind of, it doesn't really make sense that I started giving career advice on the internet, but to anybody who knew me before, they were just like, yeah, post the advice, that you give us. And the film industry is a very, very cutthroat industry, and I didn't have any connections going into it. So I had to be really scrappy and figure out how to be the best person in the room, how to write that cover letter, how to network. And I did it. And so basically I just went on TikTok when I was bored one day, downloaded it like every other millennial, posted a video, and it just went super, super viral. It was how to answer the worst interview question ever. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, which we just did, actually.
Yeah. And it went super viral, got a bunch of followers, and got terrified, deleted the app.
No way.
Yeah.
You were like, wait, I was not expecting this.
Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting, but I just didn't want to be an internet person. I didn't want to be public. I didn't want my income. I don't know. I just didn't want to go down that route. But then I re-downloaded it, and people were sending me messages about how much my advice was changing their life. And I was like, oh my gosh. But anyway, I kind of pushed it to the side. I started working at National Geographic for 2 years. And then it got to a point where my account was just so big and I was making such a big impact in people's lives that I just jumped ship. And haven't really looked back since. It's been amazing.
It's a very cool story. My biggest takeaway is if you try to delete TikTok, you eventually will re-download it.
Something I know very well.
It's impossible to avoid. But no, I think your point about the freelance element, I was not thinking about that, of how many interviews you've had to do, how many people you've had to hire, and we all have a work bestie or someone that we go to for work advice. And so I think leaning into stuff you were seeing with your friends, clearly it is working because you've blown up, and we're really grateful to have you here in studio.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So what we wanted to talk about with our new work bestie you is difficult conversations at work. So I want to set the scene. Did some research ahead of time because that's just the kind of guy I am.
You doing research.
And workplace research company Bravely had some pretty unbelievable stats around difficult conversations at work. So they found that 70% of people just prefer to avoid them generally. They're not going to even have a difficult conversation. Of the 30% that are like, okay, I can have a difficult conversation, 34% will wait at least 1 month from the time they need to have the conversation to when they actually have it. And 28% of people will wait 1 full year to have a difficult conversation.
How is that even helpful?
So it probably isn't at that point. So there's this sense that people, even when they recognize they have to have it, there is some fear, there's some trepidation from kind of jumping into the pool and having the difficult conversation. So Erin, what advice do you give to people that come to you around difficult conversations at work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is like my entire account is helping people with difficult conversations because like you said, it's like people want to say something, but they just don't know how to do so without offending or saying the wrong thing or being misinterpreted. So it just comes from a place of fear. And, you know, we learn to communicate as children. We watch our parents and the adults in our life communicate. And some of us, you know, grow up in conflict avoidant houses where you never, ever, ever see healthy conflict. So you think that any conflict either needs to escalate or, you know, you're very avoidant and you just avoid, you know, conflict altogether. And that's most people. Most people are not very good at conflict. So I think it's just starting from a place of empathy with yourself and understanding like, yeah, it's hard to have a difficult conversation. But the more of them you have, the easier they get to have. Like totally, it's just something you need to kind of expose yourself to. It's like exposure therapy. Like the more you have difficult conversations, the more you're like, oh, okay, like this is a piece of cake. I've done this before.
One of the things that I really like about your page is that you are not only talking about how to approach any difficult conversation, but you're talking about the specific script that somebody would need when facing a certain situation. So, you know, this is how to respond to that difficult interview question, or this is what happens when your friend quits at work. Like, how do you respond to them? And so I think that by giving everyone these specific scripts, you're not just saying, okay, I'm going to memorize exactly what Erin said and then repeat it, but you're saying, oh, I'm getting that exposure even without practicing myself that I really love. So if you have any difficult conversations that you have that you're, you know, maybe a little scared of, take a look at Advice with Erin, peruse some of the shorts or the posts, and get a feel for what those scripts could look like, and then customize them for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good plug, and also I think speaks to the power of prep, and I want to talk about that very briefly. But first, Erin, something you said was really interesting, which is like I've never thought about how a difficult conversation, like we've kind of been prepping for it our whole life, and if you grow up in a situation where like you haven't seen healthy conflict, you maybe can't even imagine how a difficult conversation could benefit you. And I do think that's a massive problem. Like people think of a difficult conversation and they're like, okay, there's only two ways to do this. Avoid it altogether, or I'm going to have it and it's going to escalate into something unhealthy. And so I think just recognizing that there is this maybe middle path where like a difficult conversation actually leads to something better on the other side, and the inability to have them is holding you back in your career.
Oh, you hit the nail right on the head. You will feel so good after having that conversation, especially like if you do it the right way. And usually like we're so apprehensive because we imagine worst case scenario and we don't give people the benefit of the doubt and we don't know the right words. And hence like why my account is so popular is because they're like, oh, that's good. I'm going to write that down. Like the amount of times I get that comment is I'm going to write that down. So yeah, you know, just kind of seeing examples and understanding that on the other side of it is like the weight off of your shoulders.
The best feeling.
It's amazing. We suffer the most in our mind. So in reality, we don't really suffer as much.
Yeah, it's never as bad as you think it is. And I think not that this is a relationship dating show, but it could be sponsors.
Hey, yeah.
But I do compare it to a relationship. And oftentimes like the best relationships you have, your closest friends, are sometimes the people you've had the most difficult conversations with. And you've grown so much through them. And the relationships that kind of fray are ones where you're not able to have a difficult conversation. So you just start avoiding it. And then there's no relationship to be had. So I just love that kind of reframe you brought up about like thinking about your conflict styles. I want to talk about prep now. So you mentioned all of these scripts that you have on your page about how certain phrases can really help in difficult conversations. Are there some you find yourself gravitating towards, you find yourself recommending often, turns of phrases or certain prep strategies that people should have when they're thinking about having a difficult conversation?
Absolutely. Prep is so important. So what happens when we're thinking about having a difficult conversation is we first have the conversation with ourselves. We have them like an imaginary conversation in the shower with that person.
Been there.
And we're like winning the debate, we're winning the conversation. And it's just, it's really not about that. I think I would encourage people that before they go into that conversation to think about all scenarios. Like to really, I always preach, give the person the benefit of the doubt. We are so quick to antagonize people and to think that they're out to get us, especially if you have a more aggressive like conflict style and you've only seen like conflicts escalate. We tend to think that that person's like out to get us or they're being intentionally malicious. Give the person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they have no idea. Maybe they weren't being sarcastic. Maybe they were being genuine. Like maybe it was a total miscommunication or misunderstanding. Like really truly think about like the fact that there might be, like, you have your beliefs about the situation and you might be completely wrong. So that's why I always encourage people, like, beforehand, just think about that. And also, I like to encourage people to pretend that you're in their shoes and how you would like somebody to come to you with this information. We can talk about that a little bit more later. But yeah, just kind of like calming yourself down, giving them the benefit of the doubt, like cooling it if, you tend to get a little bit riled up about things. And then, if you're on the other side of the spectrum and you don't really know how to advocate for yourself, I love like the Brene Brown quote, clear is kind. Like, just communication is respect, and being clear with people is being kind to them, and people cannot read your mind. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is, well, they should know. And it's like, how should they know?
Yeah.
Do you know what they're thinking? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, just don't expect people to read your mind, be self-aware, and go into the conversation with overflowing empathy, because that's what brings people's walls down and makes space to have an actual conversation.
Yeah, I love this concept of almost leading with curiosity and like assuming, yeah, you have your side of the equation, but they might have had a very different experience, and actually trying to understand where they're coming from first. I think that's very powerful. Kaila, I know you've built an entire course around having difficult conversations.
Yep.
What? I could be interviewing you.
And so I guess to add to what Erin was saying, like any other advice for people listening on preparing for the difficult convo?
Yeah, I have a few. Assuming good intent is like the number one thing. I think that was fantastic to point out. I also think, understanding the conflict style that you bring to the table, how you might react to various situations is just going to make you more even keeled and prepared. Like, oh, I have a tendency to pull in. When I have a difficult conversation I have to have, I avoid. And so I don't want to have that conversation. I know I need to. I'm having the difficult conversation not because I want to get into a fight, but because I want to resolve a conflict.
Yes.
I was hurt when you dismissed my idea at a meeting. I'm not going to tell you that because I want you to feel bad necessarily. I'm telling you that because I don't, A, want it to happen again, and B, I want to move past this together. And so if you view the difficult conversation not as I'm going to war, but like I'm approaching, like I'm one hard conversation away from a better situation, then I think it leaves you a little bit more, even keeled and like less emotional about it. I would also, when we're approaching prep, over prepare. Like, you have no idea how it's going to go, and imagining, like what you said, putting yourself in their shoes, imagining the ways that they could react will be beneficial.
Yeah.
And then finally, one of my tips for the preparation is to have some parachute lines prepared. So we talked about this, I think I don't remember exactly which episode, but we've talked about this in an episode previously. And a parachute line is basically a phrase that you can say when you feel like the conversation is derailing, it's getting too hot.
I
Shit
love
hits
that.
the fan.
I
It's
love
like,
that
we
parachute
got a
line.
parachute out.
Yeah. So that could be something like, listen, I really want to continue having this conversation, but I feel like it's getting off track. Like, can we pause here and let's set up a time for later this week to revisit it? I want to continue to talk about X, Y, and Z. Is that okay with you?
Ooh.
That
Or like,
allows you to cool down.
I'm feeling myself get a little more emotional than I want to during this conversation. And I'd love to come back to it when I'm more level-headed. So can we pause and come back in a week?
Tomorrow,
like,
yeah.
Such a powerful way to just like get out of a situation that's quickly spiraling to someplace you don't want to go.
Totally. Yeah, that's really good to be able to detect that too. I notice like meditation can really help with you understanding like when that feeling starts to bubble, because a lot of people don't even recognize it.
Right. And then you say something that you regret, and this is you mentioned this is helpful for relationships, but these are not relationships like personal relationships. These are professional relationships.
Absolutely. They're different.
If you bubble up and you say something that you regret, it's much, much harder to come back from that, and you still have to work with them.
Yeah, you still got to work with them. I mean, I think a lot of the relationship advice, still applies.
Yeah.
Like, I love the advice in relationships where it's like, it's not you against each other, it's you against the problem. I think it's also true, but you're right. Like, at the end of the day, people will comment, oh, why don't you just leave? And it's like that's not how work works. Like, you have to work with people that you don't like. It's not a person. They're not your friend. It's they can be your friend, but they're first a coworker. So yeah, it's important to clarify.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
So what we've done is we've maybe came up with 4 common scenarios that you might face at work where a difficult conversation is probably the best path forward, but you don't want to have that. And so we could all brainstorm how we would help people attack these certain scenarios. So Kayla, do you want to talk about scenario number 1?
Yeah, let's talk about scenario number 1. So I'm going to give you this scenario and you can just kind of react to it.
Okay.
We haven't discussed this beforehand. So we'll then react as well and we'll kind of talk about what.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your take.
How we would approach this.
Yeah.
So the first one is one that everyone has and will experience. Telling your boss that you're quitting.
Yeah.
How do you approach that conversation?
Well, I just wrote like an entire 20-page chapter on this in my book, so
Oh my gosh.
I'll try to truncate it down.
She's got a book.
She's got a book.
I'm soft launching that too right now. I have not actually announced that yet.
Boom. An exclusive on Per My Last.
Yeah. You get that one for free. Yeah, when it comes to quitting, I think it highly depends on the scenario, obviously. I think whenever somebody's leaving a job, obviously there are emotions involved. We spend most of our waking hours at our job. But some people are leaving in spite of the job, and some people are leaving to, enjoy a new opportunity. So it really depends on, the nature in which you're leaving. I always recommend leaving with grace and professionalism, regardless of the scenario. And that's not to spare your boss or whoever it is, it's actually to spare you. Because although it might feel good in the moment to, stick it to the man and really tell them how you feel, a year down the road, you're going to regret it because you're going to be carrying that with you. And I just think there's much healthier ways to get out your anger. You got Glassdoor, which is great. You got exit interviews. You got kickboxing classes. Do what you need to do in a way that protects you from future harm, because people, I think early in their careers especially, think that the world is much bigger than it is. And then you curse out that boss and you're like, you're the worst boss ever. And then you get down the road and they're your new client. And it's like, your reputation's really important. So anyway, I could talk about quitting for a long time. Obviously, 2 weeks is a courtesy, put some time on their calendar on a Friday. It's usually, tell them that you learned a lot in the role, you appreciate the job, you wish them the best of luck moving forward, but you found an opportunity that you can't turn down and you're moving on. Keep it short too. Don't go on.
Seems amazing. And something that we've heard a little bit more about recently is this trend of revenge quitting, which is quitting at the absolute worst time for your employer. And I think that I'm still pro revenge quitting, but
that does get you going a little bit.
I love revenge
quitting.
But I think the conversation with your boss can still be cordial. You can still maintain that bridge, even if you're quitting at an inopportune time for the company. So I love that. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, I would say the world is a lot smaller than you think, and reputation matters. And so what might feel good in the moment can come back and kind of bite you in the ass a year later. And so I think just being the bigger person and quitting professionally is always advantageous. The thing that I've experienced when I've had to quit a job, like the job I quit before I joined Morning Brew, I loved it. And I loved my boss, and I learned so much from him that I had this fear of quitting would let him down, or I'd be letting him down by quitting. And I think that held it back for a little bit longer than it probably should have. And what I have come to realize, and the advice I give other people now, is it's almost a test for that person too. If you do really like them and respect them, and you come to them professionally, you give enough time, you're being courteous, they're going to reveal who they really are. Yeah. And the big fear I was going to have is this person's not going to like me anymore. They were so cool. I think his literal quote was damn it, Kyle, but I'm really happy for you.
Yeah.
And that just, proved everything I thought about this person, that they really did care about me. Mm-hmm. I was being professional. They were very professional, and they've continued to be a mentor of mine. So it's unlikely the worst case scenario is actually going to play out where they're pissed at you. And if they were genuinely really mad, did you want to keep working for that person anyway? Probably not.
Yeah. So I have scenario 1A then, based on what you've just said. And I have actually heard about sometimes where this has happened. So it's not completely out of the picture, although, again, you would hope that it wouldn't. What happens if you tell your boss you're quitting and they get pissed?
Yeah.
How do you end that call? How do you react to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll give the advice, avoid burning bridges at all costs. But if somebody's being that reactive and explosive with you to the point where they're borderline verbally abusing you, they have burned that bridge.
Yeah.
You're not burning that bridge. They burned it. And you are just saying goodbye,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that if they get really upset, like you said, it's time to walk away from this conversation. I truly wish you the best of luck moving forward. Goodbye.
And if they blow up there, it's they were going to blow up at you eventually at some point in the future then. They've kind of revealed their true colors.
It's a them problem.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally. Move on to scenario 2, Kayla. Break it down.
Let's do it. Okay. How do you tell your coworker that not everything is an emergency?
Like we're talking like 9 p.m. slacks here.
9 p.m. slacks about something that is due in 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, that's a tricky one because it's like, oh, like this job is literally your life.
Yeah.
Let's see empathy. You just need to like be overflowing with like they don't have a life. Like that's sad.
Advice 1, tell them they don't have a life.
Yeah, number 1, be like, get a hobby. No, seriously. No, I think dealing with anxious coworkers is really, really common. And the worst thing that you can do with an anxious coworker is like downplay it because that just makes them more anxious. And they're like, no, you're not listening to me. This is due. So it's always funny. I give this advice to kind of like, help your coworker manage them. People are like, I shouldn't have to do that. I'm not their therapist. And I'm like, well, it's either that or you keep dealing with this.
Yeah.
So, again, empathy and have a conversation with them. Like, hey, I noticed that you reach out to me pretty late in the evening for things that maybe aren't due so soon. Like, how are you doing? Like, are you feeling like you're settling into this job well? Like, do you feel like you need more support? Like, just so you know, I'm always a resource for you. And that way you give them the support that they feel like they're lacking, and that's what's making them anxious. Anxiety is caused by unknowing, not knowing what's going to happen, and a lack of control. And so if you give them a little bit of empathy and help to be able to control what's going on, that is actually going to make them less anxious. So something that I always say is there's a difference between like saying something that's right and saying what's effective. Like what's right is like, you're being like so annoying right now. Like it's 9 p.m. This isn't due for 3 weeks. Like that's correct to say, but it's not effective. It's like telling somebody who took you hostage, like it's illegal to take people hostage. And they're like, that's not
They're
effective.
like, oh, it is? Shit, I'll let you go now. Yeah.
Strategic communication.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's really smart.
I love the quote, like, do you want to be successful or do you want to be right or do you want to be successful or do you want to be right? Do you want to be effective?
Yeah.
And I also think this is a conversation that you could have broadly with your team about boundaries. And like, to your point about anxiety, and it stems from not knowing, they might just not be clear on like what the expectations are for communication.
Yeah.
And so whether you're leading the team or your manager says like, here's the expectations of when you should be communicating with, and like after 5 p.m., like it's okay, just save it, schedule send for 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And once people have those boundaries, I think they will, more than likely respect them. And if they're not, then the conversation can be like, hey, I have boundaries and you need to be respecting them.
Yeah, I think on my end, this situation is one that, first of all, you have approached with a lot more empathy than I have. Having been on both sides of this, where I either think something is an emergency or when somebody else thinks something is emergency, it's like very annoying on either side. And so I really love your approach there. I think also something about boundaries that we've talked about in the past, but I think is really important to bring up again, is that having a boundary is not telling the other person what to do. It's telling the other person how you will react when they do something that you don't like. For example, if this person is sending you messages every single day at 9 p.m. and is upset when you aren't responding to them immediately, I think that's when you can draw that boundary of, you're allowed. I cannot make you not send it. I would prefer you didn't send it to me at 9 p.m. That being said, I will not be responding until 9 a.m. the next morning. And if that is a problem for you, let's have a continued discussion about, what does that mean? Why do I need to be? If you're my boss sending this, maybe I get compensated for overtime, if you're sending me 9 p.m. slacks. So I think it's that importance of what this boundary means for you and what it means for me. And so that's one way. If when you approach them with empathy, they're not really responding well, you can be like, all right, line in the sand.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say like my communication like manifesto is like speak softly and carry a big stick.
Very Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah. So like I would approach it really softly, and then if they keep pushing that boundary, that's when I would do what you just did and kind of like slam the hammer a little bit and be like, all right, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
But my advice always first is to lead with softness and empathy, because usually like the meanest and the cruelest, or the, in this case, the most anxious people you meet have been met with a world like that. And so when you meet them with softness and you're not like, your emergency is not my urgency or whatever it is, like that's cute, but it's not helping anybody. And it's not a good way to communicate, and it's not strategic. So that's definitely, I agree.
I love that.
And Erin, I really love like this sense I'm getting from you, which is like trying to understand the other person and really detaching yourself from like saying the thing you really want to say, but saying the thing that's actually going to resolve the issue. And I think it's just a nice thing to reflect on. Like, okay, if you do, it's kind of hard to be a little more curious than you might want to be. It's hard to lead with empathy, but ultimately it's going to get you to the spot you want to be in. I think it's just really, really awesome advice. And also a Teddy Roosevelt quote.
Love
Incredible.
that.
Right? Don't get mad, get curious. Yeah.
So, all right, I have another situation for us. A micromanaging boss. We've all dealt with them, people that are like way up in your business. They want to know every single update. They seemingly don't trust you. Really hard conversation to have, just because of the situation, but also because they're your boss. Advice for people in that scenario.
Yes, this is like a really common question I've been getting lately. I don't know what's in the air, but everybody's being micromanaged right now. So when you're dealing with micromanaging, there are two buckets. One of the buckets is it is a them problem. So your boss lacks the ability to be able to delegate and be a proper leader, and you're actually doing your job properly, and they're lacking the skills. The other bucket is it's a you problem, and you actually have been dropping the ball or maybe messing up, and your boss feels the need to micromanage you because of a lack of trust. So those are kind of the two different scenarios, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a mixture of both. You've been dropping the ball, and your boss doesn't have. In fact, most of the time, it's probably a little bit of both. Yeah. So, it kind of depends on the scenario. So first, I would look to yourself and think, have I been dropping the ball? Have I not been living in my integrity? Have I not been doing what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it? Because if that's the case, it's kind of a you problem. That's what some of my advice is kind of you need to work on it yourself. But if it is indeed you're checking all your boxes and it is your boss's problem and they just simply lack the leadership skills to be able to manage you properly. Again, it goes back to that anxiety. Your boss has a lack of trust, and so they feel like they have to hover over you to make sure that you're doing your job so that they can do their job. So whenever somebody's micromanaging you, I would say macro communicate with them. So before your boss can message you, hey, send me updates throughout the day, proactively message them and be like, hey, here are updates. And I know you're going to ask about this later, so here's that. And I know it sounds like a pain to do that, but just do it for like 5 days. And then they'll start to kind of feel like, oh, okay, wait, this person, I think they have it under control. And like almost be annoying with them. Like give them so many updates that they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it. And
Get it with like an Uno reverse card. Like I will update you so many times, you won't even want more updates.
Yeah, I'm macro communicating with you. And if that's not working, like just have a frank conversation. Like, hey, it's been really hard to do my work. Having to provide these frequent updates. Like, is there a way that we can, meet at the end of the day to provide updates? And then over time, as that trust develops, they will definitely micromanage you less.
I love that. And I think the zoom out here is having a difficult conversation is very, very hard. People don't want to have a tough conversation. And one of the pieces of advice to avoiding a difficult conversation is to identify what the problem is and try to fix it proactively. Yeah. And only once it's clear that your actions and changing kind of your approach isn't working, then that's when you have to, okay, now let's call it out. Let's discuss it. Let's have that difficult conversation. And hopefully then it improves. But I love that advice of macro communicate. You're not having that hard conversation yet. You're not acknowledging, hey, I'm feeling micromanaged. You're just changing your behavior and seeing if their behavior also changes, which I love. As somebody who hates having difficult conversations, I love that. I just have to change my behavior a little bit and hopefully that'll work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely give very introvert and shy friendly advice, just always going that route first of trying to change your actions and then, having a conversation if it comes to it.
Amazing.
The other thing I'll add, and not to make this an econ podcast, but I'm about to drop the word incentive.
Oh, great.
Ooh.
And I think
Love it.
one part, particularly when dealing with your boss or having difficult conversation with your boss, is understanding what their incentives are and what their goals are. I think this is good advice for any difficult conversation. And you mentioned this, looking at the problem together. I think a lot of times we go into a difficult conversation and we're like, this is affecting me and this is how it's hurting me. If you want someone's behavior to change, think about what they're trying to accomplish and help them understand that what they're doing is putting them further away from their goal. So if you can have a conversation with your boss, hey, I know that your big goal this year is X, Y, and Z, and you're communicating with me in this way, and it's actually affecting my ability to help you achieve X, Y, or Z in these ways. I think if you communicated this way, we'd get closer to that goal together.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And framing it in I'm trying to help you achieve your goals, but we're just going about this the wrong way. Let's work together to solve this. That is such a powerful reframe that I've seen be very successful in other people's careers.
Yeah, I mean, that is career advice 2.0. I think what I see a lot is people don't understand how difficult it is to manage until you're managing. And then you're like, oh, I get it. This is why they were micromanaging. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said.
Do we want to do one last scenario?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Your teammate isn't pulling their weight? Is
What
that
do
where
you-
we want to go? Very difficult situation.
This is what I started with earlier today about you not pulling your weight on the podcast.
Ooh, do you guys want to?
We've come full circle. Let's model the behavior now.
Yeah.
So, Erin, you have a coworker. You're working alongside them. It seems like you're trying a lot harder than they are. They're not holding their weight in projects. Like, advice to approach that type of conversation.
Absolutely. You're going to notice a trend here. But again, 2 buckets. I like to have like visuals. Next time I'm going to bring props.
Yeah, we should have brought buckets ahead of time.
There's two kind of buckets. So one is your coworker's not pulling their weight. They're a lazy coworker, and it is not affecting you. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh, it's so annoying. They're just like lazy, but it's not like affecting you. In that case, I would try your darndest to ignore it because it is not a you problem, and they will suffer consequences for that behavior in their life. And don't worry, like it will come back to haunt them, and like that's the life that they're choosing to live, and that's fine. Then there's the other bucket where it is affecting you. And it is affecting your ability to perform your duties and responsibilities. And in that case, here we go again, sound like a broken record, lead with empathy, give them the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what people are going through in their life. You don't know if like every day is a struggle for them to get out of bed. You don't know if like their dad just died. Like you just don't know what's going on in someone's life. And if you come at them and you're like, hey, like, why are you pulling your weight? Like, you're making my life so hard. And they're like, oh, sorry, like my house burned down. And you're like, oh shit. Okay,
Like
well,
now I feel
right.
now I feel like a
horrible.
dick.
Yeah.
So you always just want to lead with empathy and just be like, hey, you know, I've noticed that you've been turning in these reports like later than the deadline, and that really affects me because I'm the one who has to consolidate everything and give it to the C-suite. You know, can we talk about like a plan to get these in on time? Like, I don't know if you're going through anything right now, but if you are, I want to be supportive of you. Again, like you could go into that guns a-blazing and be like, why can't you get anything in on time? Like it is driving me insane. Or be like passive aggressive with them. Like, oh, maybe we should change the deadline because, you know, you have been having a hard time reaching deadlines lately. Like, those are different. Like aggressive and passive aggressive are like the worst communication styles. You definitely want to go into this with empathy, with assertive. You want to be direct with them. Like you are missing your deadlines. That is a fact. And this is how it's affecting me and the business. But I'm not saying that you're a bad person. I'm just saying that this is a behavior, and I'm here for you if you want to figure this out together.
I love the advice, and it reminds me of difficult conversations where a course that we had built prior to this podcast, and it was about task-based, role-based, and personal-based, like kind of like critiques.
Yeah.
And you want to stay away from personal. Like the second you're saying, yeah, you're missing deadlines because you're lazy, like that's not going to be a good conversation.
Yeah.
But if you can focus on specific roles or specific tasks where you're seeing the problem, you're talking about how it's affecting you, you're trying to brainstorm solutions, you're in a much better spot. So I think that's really lovely advice.
Yeah.
Love that.
Okay, that's all the scenarios we had. I will say, Erin, like this was very refreshing because I think this idea of like getting curious, leading with empathy is a much healthier way to think about difficult conversations than maybe some of the other content I see.
Which is like, art of war.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's like people like coming at your coworker, like snapping back in. Like, yeah, that sounds really cute and like a little TikTok, but in reality,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work.
doesn't work.
It's like
Yeah.
clapback culture. Like it feels good in the moment, but like you're not really solving anything. And so I just really love your approach. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Congrats on the numbers you're doing, which are phenomenal. And also congrats on the soft launch of the book.
Yeah, soft launching that on your podcast, I guess.
Last question. If people want to stay in touch with you, where can they find you?
Oh, of course. Instagram, at Advice with Erin, TikTok, Erin McGoff, YouTube, at Advice with Erin. I post so much great stuff on YouTube, so definitely follow me there. I have a free career quiz that people can take too, advicewitherin.com/quiz, and a newsletter called Hyperhelpful, hyperhelpful.com.
Oh, love the name.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Kayla, should we roll the credits?
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Lonnie Fiskus.
James Atamian is a senior video producer.
And our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Enjoy those difficult combos.